The liberal has to become more populist understanding about how monetary policy is so anti-middle class and anti-poor, and that just taxing productive citizens, there's a lot of productive citizens in this country who do it on their own, and they're not part of the very rich who benefit from government, and to tax them is detrimental. It doesn't solve the problem, and it takes away jobs. You know, if you tax productive individuals, you hurt job production, and yet that's where we are today. I think it's starting to people are starting to recognize that our economy is in bad shape and people are getting poorer. In this last election, I think people expressed themselves not only about the war, but I think there was a lot of deep expression about worry about the economy in spite of the low rate of unemployment. I think it's the underemployment, you know, poor jobs, that we don't have the jobs that we have sent overseas because of the way the monetary system works, and they're getting pretty nervous about this. So it's a really great opportunity to get involved in this education. That's why I'm delighted to hear about what you're doing with programs like this and other activities, because this is exactly what is necessary to reach the kids. You know, I am convinced that I can do much better with 8 and 10 and 12-year-olds when I go to schools. I always worry about it because I end up talking about inflation and money and the Constitution out here. Well, these kids don't have, but I'm convinced they understand better than these people who have been locked into these silly beliefs than the people who are in Congress, because they're closed-minded. But kids are more open-minded, and that's the secret to our salvation, is to raise up a generation of people who understand it, not only because it's important to understand economics, but it's also in their best interest. That entitlements do not satisfy the best interest of the people. That eventually destroys a country. So it's the understanding of economic policy which is in the best interest of all of us.
Most people in the United States don't realize that you can go to the U.S. Treasury's website and you can download the financial statement of the United States and you can read it yourself. I do this. I don't know anybody else that does. But in it, you see the entitlements projected out for 20 years. You also do not see the money that they're spending. Where's the money coming from that they're spending in Iraq and Afghanistan, the unfunded, not the unfunded liabilities, but the off-budget items. They're not in there at all, yet somehow the money appears for them to spend on Iraq, Afghanistan, and the war on terror. But the entitlements and the coming generation of retirees, what's going to happen when the baby boom generation retires and you see expenses and income on graph after graph in the financial statement of the United States? They're basically telling us what is going to happen in the future, and it's not a pretty picture.
No, and we don't know exactly what year that's going to happen. The economy is shaky right now. The stock market is shaky. Let's say we are moving into a pretty steep downturn. Then all the projections are, inaccurate, because we don't know how many people will be working next year or the year after, so we don't know the income. And we can estimate to a degree the expenses, but even that is difficult because private pension funds are insured by the government, and they're going to inherit a lot, and we are transferring some of the medical responsibility from private corporations who no longer can happen, like the prescription drug program was a transfer from private responsibility to government responsibility. And this is so huge that nobody can quite comprehend it. It's into the many, many trillions of dollars. All we know for certain is it's not workable, and it will fall apart. But I always tell the elderly, you're always going to get a check. We're always going to send you a check for your Social Security, and it's going to go up. But we will always fudge on what the real rate of inflation is, so it will never go up quite for you. So your real income is going to stay flat or go down. But you're always going to get a check, and they'll try to keep up. But the question is what's it going to buy? Even if it comes gradually, and electricity doubles, and your check doesn't double, you're going to suffer. And I think that is what's going to happen. I think this country is going to get much, much poorer, and the entitlements will finally have to end. because just printing the money and running up the deficit or expecting foreigners to continue to loan us the money, it's not going to last. It's just a dream, and it's very, very serious. And even though there's a few people in Washington talks about it, they're not really serious about it. It's put it off. There's a deep concern in Washington for the next election already. We've just had an election already. What is the deep concern? About 2 years from now, how do we get power back for the Republicans? How are we going to maintain power? Who's going to be president? It's a game that they're playing. They're not thinking about the cause of liberty and the future and understanding monetary policy and why this thing won't work. That's the lowest on their priorities, and it's all to pander, to get votes, and they're dealing in a very corrupt system. There's less corruption than you might believe in the conventional sense of members of Congress taking money under the table. They're dealing in a corrupt system where they're transferring wealth back and forth, and that's their job. And the better they transfer this wealth from somebody else who's paying the taxes to their district, I mean, that's the sign of an effective congressman. So they work very hard at that. It's a system that is corrupt, and it invites a lot of abuse, and that's why this entitlement system has just gotten totally out of control. But in a way, though, when the crisis hit, there'll be some good things that come about it. People will recognize that hard work is an honorable thing to do, and we have to work to maintain a standard of living. And it means also that we're going to pull in our horns. We won't pretend that we can tell other people how to live and that we're going to take democracy. Well, the founders didn't even like democracy, and we're expending lives and hundreds of billions of dollars to go over there and tell the Iraqi people how they're going to live. I mean, that's going to end. It's going to end, not because of great wisdom gravitating to Washington. It's going to end because we're going to run out of our wealth, and the entitlement system will be declared bankrupt.
You mentioned earlier about printing money and the decline of the middle class when this happens. There's a number of examples in history of this happening before. Have you got any comments on that? Oh,
yes, they're frequent. And one characteristic about a country that debases its currency and goes to a paper currency, the currency always self-destructs. It always ends. I mean, today, you know,
tell us the difference between an asset-backed currency and a fiat currency.
Well, the fiat means that it is declared by government that this is money, it's paper and it's money, and it's by government declaration. Where if you use a gold coin, the value comes from the marketplace, and government can't reproduce this, so it's always exchangeable, and the people will accept it. If this is sunk on a boat and a ship now, or it was 500 years ago, you dig it up, it has tremendous value. There will be numismatic value plus the real value of gold. This sinks, you put it to the bottom, and who cares? You know, this loses probably 5 to 10% a year in value. So it's very, very destructive. And that's why it's so important to have real money. And the other important reason, other than the economic reason, is it restrains government. If we had hard money, and we had to pay our bills, we would have to tax everybody for the entitlement system and the war. Taxes would double, maybe. I mean, there would be a huge increase in taxes. The other thing I would like to do is make everybody pay on a monthly basis. Mainly not to annoy them.
To remind them,
yes. To say, this is what you're paying for government. And the government's not allowed to spend any money other than what they take, and they have to get out of this business of financing big government. Because when you do this, when you have this right to print money, you produce big government, and the government does the wrong things, always at the expense of individual liberty.